who has done more than 3 public speaking tournaments knows, speaking, it's not really that hard. Speaking is pretty easy, but of course with a few caveats and there, things can get a bit complicated. But generally, speaking is just easy. You only have 3 minutes to do the job. Of course, prep time can be minutes per speaker. If you end up having 1,000, if you end up having a tournament with about 500 kids, that means and let's say like 30 adjudicators, that means you end up probably having like 15 to 20 speakers per room, per round, and things can get a bit tricky there. And so it's important for you to then anchor yourself in the most basic adjudication principles, so that even when you meet speaker number 18, you will still judge them with the same fairness as you did with speaker number 1, regardless of you being tired, regardless of all that. I think those are the most important things, that every speaker gets judged fairly and that everyone gets the points that they deserve. I mean, it's important for that to happen. And so I think then by understanding the basic judging principles of every speech type and generally the speech delivery, then you have something to anchor your adjudication on, right? Anchors are very, very important. And I think even generally in life, even when you're doing other things, it's important to have anchors. And so we are going to be looking at that today, specifically in terms of judging speeches and their different speech types, and generally just delivery on itself. So judges need to understand, of course, different speech types and how to deliver them for you to then know how to judge them. I think that's what makes a really good judge, that you know how a speech needs to be delivered, so that you know how to judge. I think that's why we usually say even an average speaker can make a good judge, because an average speaker technically knows how certain speeches should be delivered, right? It's not particularly necessary for you to be a speaker, for you to be a good judge, but it's good to have those speaking, for you to have that speaking background, for you to be an adjudicator. And that's why I keep saying, if it's not a high school tournament, if you know you love judging high schoolers, and you know, that's great because you like helping people to grow and giving back to the community, blah blah blah, all those excuses that we try to give ourselves to just run away from the thing. Go into uni tournaments, go into spars, and just speak. It doesn't matter, especially when you have like spars. Those are very low stake situations that you can put yourself. Because I mean, what's the worst that can happen in a spar? That you're going to lose a tournament. Nothing like that is going to happen at a spar. Probably just gonna lose that round, and it's okay who are there. Give people feedback. The more personal feedback you get as a speaker, the better you become as a judge, because you get to understand the different judging metrics of judging the same speech type. Like most of the experience that I have gotten as an adjudicator was not even from myself. Like as Harold is saying, there's a speaking manual somewhere out there that I wrote. And I wrote it, I think I wrote it in 2023 as well, or 2024, probably 2024. And the time I did that, the information that is in that manual was not because of my vibes as an adjudicator. I think I'd only judged like 6 tournaments by then. I don't judge too many tournaments by then. So it wasn't from my vast experience as an adjudicator, just from my vast experiences as a speaker. Because at that time I'd done quite a number of tournaments. Just from all the feedback I'd gotten from the different adjudicators that had in the room, and I applied. The best way for you to learn how to be a proper adjudicator is for you to do the speech, get feedback from other judges on how you should have done that speech better and how that speech is performed better. And in that way, you get to also get these skills probably by osmosis or something. Yeah, I don't know. But you just get these skills as you move forward. So like these ones apply across the board for every speech type, and regardless of what is happening. Speech flow. This is just generally how the speech flows. Is it easy to follow from beginning to end? Can you tell where the intro is? Can you tell where we are going? Or did the speech just end abruptly? See, you never really want that to happen. So, depending on how well the speaker has been able to structure their speech, whether it's a simple speech structure, like there's a simple introduction, um, let's call it the middle part and then the conclusion, or it's a more complex speech structure where there are things like flashbacks, where there are metaphors, where there are things that make the speech much better to listen to. If there's more elements of that, are those ones also easy to tell through the flow of the speech that, okay, so this is where the flashback has started, this is where it has ended? Is it easy to pick out those things? The easier it is, the better the speech flow, and so the better the points that they would get in that regard. Vocal control is also, vocal control is probably the second most important judging metric and also speaker metric as well. Vocal control determines a lot in a speech, a lot in even how the speech is perceived by the audience. Because understand, when you're speaking to people, when you're trying to communicate a message, the most important element that we usually rely on is emotion. And how do you really communicate emotion? It's through your voice, through how you say things. There's another great adjudicator we have in Canada. His name is Steve. And Steve says something a lot in every tournament. I don't think there is any tournament that has passed, high school, uni, that he has not said this. He says, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. He probably picked that from someone else, I am sure. But in its simplicity, he simply tries to communicate the importance of how you use your voice to communicate the message that you want to pass. That learning how to modulate your tone, how to modulate your pausing can present a much stronger impact in the speech than if you do not have that skill. And so, learning proper vocal control is the second most important skill in public speaking, and also learning how to listen for proper vocal control is an important judging skill that unfortunately a lot of judges do not have. And so, it's something that I think should be of keen interest whenever like a judge training is happening. And so we'll look at that a bit more in the training. Then I think it's also important to understand that speakers have their own individual style, how they speak, distinctive visual presentations as well. And you can only learn this, the more you judge people, the more you're able to bracket these people into groups. For now, there's only 3 groups. There are graceful speakers. Graceful speakers are people who they don't do too much. They don't have a lot of energy in their speeches, but the speeches are very, very deep because of how well they have trained their vocal control, such that the speaker might not be all over the stage. They might stand still probably the entire time. But in how they speak, in how they present, and the depth that they have in their voice, there is so much emotion, there is so much depth, and it properly fulfills the task that has been set for the specific speech. So it's important for you to also understand graceful speakers and animated speakers. Now, animated speakers are the ones who have a lot of energy. They have a lot of stage presence. You can feel the energy that they bring on stage because of just how much energy they have. Then now the third category is a hybrid, like myself. It depends on the speech type. I can switch between the two. I can switch between graceful and animated depending on the speech type. So first of all, as a judge yourself, it's important for you to know where you lie, know who you are, so that you can prevent having a bias towards that style. This is why, again, I keep saying it's important for for you as a judge to be a speaker as well, so that you know such things. So if you figure out I am usually a graceful speaker, then you might have bias towards similar speaking styles. Where if someone is also very calm, collected, but very deep in how they speak, you might feel inclined to give them more points, give them more scores, even if sometimes that's not what the speech requires, or sometimes it's really not that they have anything better than the other animated speakers. For example, you might feel like an animated speaker, they didn't need to have all that energy, they didn't need to do all that. So you end up penalizing them for something that is not particularly a problem. And that's where, when now as CAP you're looking back at scores, you find a speaker has been given 52 in one room, and then in the next room they have like a 75 or a 76, and you ask yourself what could be the problem here. And when you go to ask the two chairs in those two different rooms what is happening, you end up realizing that this was an individual style bias. It wasn't really that the speaker was bad. It was just an individual style bias, either from the first room or the second room. That's just how things go. So it's important for you to then understand where you lie as a judge, so that you can prevent having any bias towards that distinctive style of presentation. Secondly, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Fourth, visual presentation. Visual presentation is, of course, now the third judging metric. First one is always content, second is vocal control, and then third one is visual presentation. Visual presentation is what people see on stage. What are you doing with your hands, your face? What exactly is happening on stage that can give the speech a bit more context, a bit more depth, right? Because when speakers have things like props and there's like purposeful stage movement, those things can be a plus, but sometimes they can also be a minus if the speaker is not able to utilize those things properly. So it's important for you to understand those elements and for you to then know this is how we judge X, Y, and Z in terms of visual presentation, depending also on the individual speaking style as well. We'll look at visual presentation and vocal control a bit later. So let's talk about context. I think this one, every time I've been in Uganda, for all the tournaments that I've been at, this is the most important thing that I keep telling speakers. I think this is probably a problem that lies across the board, across the continent, across the world for all the speakers. In a speech, these are the three most important things that we must get by the end of it. We must understand who the speaker is, who they are speaking to, and why they are giving that speech that they are giving. Those three things are very, very important to understand, and those three things must be the heart of their speech. That if you want to do a motivational speech and you've been asked to speak to, you've been given a speech task and you've been told this is an inspirational speech, and you're told the speech task is the sky may be blue, the sky may be black, the sky may be green, the sky may be cloudy, but one thing will never change: the sky remains above. If that is the speech task that you've been given, then how do you change that statement without any context of who you are, who you're speaking to, or why? How do you change motivational speech that makes sense? Speakers usually come and just start giving us an interpretation of what they think it means, and then they start giving us motivation. Call to action from the first minute. By the 30th second, you've already gotten enough call to action that you don't even think the speaker has anymore. But lo and behold, they still have more. And they still keep telling, oh, you need to change, you need to stop, you need to start. There's so many things that speakers bring into this part of the speech without allowing us to even get an understanding of who they are, who they're speaking to. Why do the speakers think that they have the moral upper hand to be the ones giving us this information? It comes from the context. You can just start giving people motivation if they don't know who they are, right? If you get invited to speak, at an event. Let's say you've been asked to give a speech at a wedding, right? For some reason, you've just been asked to speak. Maybe the person who's getting married is your brother or your cousin or your best friend or whatever, but you've been asked to speak. In that context, the reason why whatever message you will say would hit home is because people know that you are the best friend / brother / whoever to the couple getting married. They know they are the audience at the wedding, and they know they are there to just listen to you giving a speech, right? And so they are waiting to hear what you're going to say. They expect that you're probably going to be funny. They expect that you're going to say something nice and something sweet to the newlyweds. You're going to wish them well, wish them blessings and all that. There's already that expectation just based off of who you are and the context within which you're speaking in. Now imagine a speech where that does not exist, where you don't know who you are, you don't know who we are as your audience, we don't know who we are. And so the message that you're going to be presenting will not have as much impact because of those two missing details. And so it's important for the speaker to always tell you who they are within the speech and to also tell you who you are within that speech. So that as a judge, you can then put yourself in that mental frame of being audience X and them being speaker Y for message Z to make sense. I hope I'm being clear. Just throw me a thumbs up if you get what I'm saying. Just throw me a thumbs up. Great. I can see them. All right. So that frame, I think every time as a judge, you are giving personal feedback to a speaker. Every time you're giving general feedback in the room, this has to be the one thing that you emphasize for speakers. If they don't tell you who you are as the person who's listening, if in their speech it is not apparent who they are as well, then the message that they have will not have as much impact as we want it to have. And so those two details must be the first thing that they consider during their prep time. They must first of all outline who they are and who they're speaking to as they prep for their speech, so that whatever message that they want to pass will have the impact that they want it to have. Let's move on to specific speech types and what is particularly important for us to consider within these different speech types. We'll start with the most simple and my personal favorite, narrative speeches. Narrative speeches are simply storytelling. You're just giving people tea about whatever thing you want to talk about. The task will give you either slight context about where the story is set, or it will literally tell you nothing about where the story is set. And so it's up to you to decide whether you're going to give that context based off of the speech task. It's either you are the one who's giving the context to fit the lesson, or you are giving the lesson to fit the context. What that means is, let me give you two examples of speech types that you can get. You can get a speech that says, the year was 1945, ... That's a speech. The year was 1945, ... That's it. What do you think that one is? That's a speech that has given you a bit of context of where the story is set. So it's up to you to figure out the whole story of 1945. A lot of things happened in 1945. A lot of things happened in 1945 was a crazy year. 1945 to 1950, that was a very crazy period. A lot happened during that period in time. And so there is a lot for you to anchor your story on. So what you do then is figure out the story and figure out the lesson, but you already have the speech context. Now, a different speech for a different speech task for narrative speech could be, the grass is green where you water it. So you have the lesson, which is the grass is green where you water it. That's the speech value. So now what is the story? What is the story context? Then now it's up to you to figure that out. In both of those speech types, or in both of those speech tasks, you will notice we have not told you who you are, we have not told you who you are speaking to. In one of those speech types, the speech tasks, we have told you why. You are trying to pass a message that is the grass is green where you water it. That's it. So you have to figure out those details as a speaker. And so as a judge, you need to listen to those details within the story, right? Not the speeches have to be stories. So within those stories, you have to listen to those details of who they are, who they're speaking to, and why, and listen to now cohesiveness of the story, the flow, and those are things we said are the basic judging principles at the beginning. Now, in Elijah's trainings, Elijah is another fabulous judge. I think he probably did a judge training either last week or something. He likes saying something. There needs to be a difference between listening to your speech and watching puppy videos. Puppy videos are cute. They're fabulous for entertainment. We love watching puppies. They're great. But then what's the difference between that and listening to your speech? If your speech is just a good story without any lesson, then you're just a good storyteller. But this isn't storytelling. This is public speaking. Public speaking requires you to have that message, that speech value, let's call it, at the end of your speech. There needs to be a lesson that people are drawing from what you're saying. And so is that lesson apparent? Is it laid out apparently by the speaker? Do they tell you this is a call to action that we have? This is the lesson that you probably draw. This is a call to action. Like now for the speech that said grass is greener where you water it, that is probably the speech value. Is it brought out clearly that the message from the story is the grass is greener where you water it? And then what is the call to action that they have? What is the call to action that they present within the speech that allows you to then properly understand the message that they are trying to pass? It's important for that lesson to exist as well. So in a narrative speech, simplest thing apart from the judging principles is it must be a story, and there has to be some form of speech value at the end. That's why I love doing narrative speeches. They're very simple. There aren't a lot of details that go into it. As long as I give you a story and I give you a lesson at the end, I am in a good position to get an 80 in my speech. So yeah. Persuasive speeches. These ones, I don't really like this too much because now then a lot of things go into these ones. And one thing I realize that speakers have a problem with is they go immediately into the call to action. There is hardly ever context given for why the speakers think they are the ones to be persuading us to do something. I don't know why they think that they just have a moral upper hand to tell us to change certain habits that we have. Because you see, the persuasive speech, you're either trying to convince people to stop something that they're doing or to start doing something. Those are the two most common things that you're trying to convince people to do. Whenever you're doing a persuasive speech, the question is, why do you think you should be the one who's telling me this, right? And that only comes from the context. So the build up to the call to action only comes from the context. We first of all need to understand who you are and who we are in this situation for the call to action to even make sense. You can have a very strong message. You can have a very present energy within the room. But if we do not know who we are as your audience, then your message will not really hit home. And so you need to build up to that call to action. You don't just start the speech with call to action. So use stories, use analogies, use metaphors, just to start poking at the emotion of your audience. Because see, persuasive speeches are very emotion heavy, very emotion heavy. People resist change. People like resisting change. So when you're trying to tell people to either start or stop doing something, that means you're pulling them from a situation where they're very comfortable to being slightly uncomfortable just for that change to exist. So they need to want to change. And that means you need to have those elements of like emotional manipulation for people to move. And that's why on a higher level, apart from just stories, analogies, and metaphors, We do comparatives and end goals for imagery and emotional manipulation. When you're comparing, you show them a situation where they have changed and where they continue existing as they are, and show them the situation where the change exists is a much better off situation for them. End goals sometimes are important as well. When you're looking at, give them a thing that they want to achieve and show them that the path that they are going on is not what will allow them to reach that end. And you always glamorize the end goal, make it look very, what do we say? I've forgotten the term that we use, but make it look like a very utopia. Yes, make it look very utopian, right? Such that it's something that they want to achieve, something they do need. It's a situation that they need to from there. It's the change that you want them to go through to allow them to reach that position. If a speaker does not show you comparatives, if there's no end goal, if there isn't any stories, analogies, metaphors, nothing, it's just a plain up speech, that's not a speech that can perform very well because there aren't any emotional anchors within that speech. There are no, there's nothing really that can push people to take action. So these things are the stories, analogies, and metaphors are good for context. They are good for um, allowing that build up to the call to action to exist. But the call to action only comes from these comparatives and end goals. These emotional anchors are the only things that then lead to that call to action being of substantial use within the speech to bring out the impact that you want to have. So if you only have stories, analogies, and metaphors, that's probably like an average speech. If there aren't any imagery, emotional, let's call it emotional manipulation, plain and straight. If there isn't any of that, then it's an average speech. But if they have the analogies, the metaphors, what, and then they have these elements of emotional manipulation, then that's a much better speech and it probably will rank much higher, even as you do your own adjudication. So it's important for you to then know what these elements look like, what they sound like within a speech. This comes from one, listening to a lot of speeches, but also secondly, from you also doing a lot of these speeches yourselves. So whenever you get into a position where you can do spars, just do the spars. I think the feedback that you will get will be important for you to understand this emotional manipulation and how best it works within persuasive speeches. So about informative speeches, I think this is one of my least favorite speech types. This is what led me to losing the quarterfinals in EAUDC. This is 2024 EAUDC. I got beat in the quarters because of this, because it was an informative speech. And so I spent the next probably like 4, 5, 6 months doing nothing but informative speeches, nothing but informative speeches. It was the only thing I was doing because it's the one thing that led me to lose that tournament. And so when I got to now our nationals that came up a bit later, my informative speech was the best ranked speech within all my other speeches, even if like all my other speeches were great. Informative speech was my best speech because I had forced myself to learn how to do this informative speeches better. Informative speeches are as plain as it can be. It's just that you're giving people information about whatever speech that whatever speech task that you've been given. So there's going to be facts, figures, quotes, true stories, not just true stories, not just stories, but like true stories. I bring in those things in, you bring those things in there, right? It's important for these things to exist because largely this is not a fictional speech type. You are not free to do, in all the other speeches, you are free to fly, you are free to become a bird, you are free to do whatever you want. But within this specific speech type, as much as there is room for imagination, it's important for us to remember that the main anchors are the facts and figures that are true, right? So even if we will have some elements of imagination and some presentation styles that will make the speech much more interesting to listen to, we'll see that the main anchors are, of course, these facts and figures and the true stories that exist. In every informative speech that you will judge, there will only be two speakers. There will either be the boring lecturer or there will be the cool teacher. Unfortunately, a lot of speakers will end up being boring lecturers, and you'll probably get either one or two in a room of about 18 speakers. That will be the cool teacher. Think about this as, let me take you back to high school. In high school, there was always that one teacher that you loved because of just how they gave their lessons. They were more interesting to listen to. There was laughter. There was a lot of laughter in those rooms. There were stories. They used to throw in a bit of stories here and there. As much as the stories might not be relevant to whatever was being spoken in class, there was storytelling. There was laughter. There were jokes. These were things that made you want to at least be in those classes, even if you really hated the subject. For example, I hated chemistry. I still don't like chemistry, even now. I hated chemistry, but I loved the chemistry teacher. The man was funny. He had a lot of dad jokes. Funny enough, he wasn't a dad, so I wonder why he had dad jokes. But like, yeah, point is, he was a funny man, and so the classes were interesting to listen to. I loved English, favorite subject. Okay, second favorite subject, but our teacher was very boring. Very boring lecturer, very boring. But well, yeah, I still love the subject. Now you see, if I had my interesting teacher teaching my favorite subject, that would have been great. But you see, the world, it will never give you everything. So even you as a judge, when you're listening, understand that whatever speech you might get, the speech task might be something that is very cool. Like you might give the CAP team might take a lot of time to craft a very interesting informative speech. And in your head, you're like, this speech is going to be fabulous and speakers are going to do great. And then they're going to come and do shit in those rooms. And you will hate every speaker that does not do the speech justice. But remember that not everyone is cut out to be an informative speaker. And so are they a boring lecturer or are they a cool teacher? If they're a boring lecturer, then you already know where they're falling off. They probably don't have audience engagement elements, like storytelling. There's no jokes, there's no things that make the speech interesting. But you ask yourself, within the heart of the speech, have they presented their facts and figures? Yes. Have they presented the information that was necessary to present depending on the speech task? Yes. So what they're falling off on is in terms of the delivery in of itself. Maybe there wasn't a lot of energy on stage. So then you ask yourself, are they a graceful speaker or an animated speaker? If they are graceful, then what could they have done better to give this information, this informative speech, a bit of heart? And that is what we. The cool teacher is the one who can easily be confused for a great speaker. Just because they're cool, just because they're fun, doesn't mean that everything that they did, that they fulfilled every speech objective within the speech task. Informative speeches sometimes like coming with a lot of info slides. I think most of the informative speeches that I have either prepared or have judged before have always had a bit of an info slide, giving more context into the informative speech, like what is being spoken about, and we also do go ahead and sometimes tell the speakers who they are and who they are speaking to within the speech. It might not be the case with every speech task, but within that speech task, you will always get a bit more understanding. I think with informative speeches, there's always a bit more context and just generally who the speaker is and who they're speaking to. So always look out for that. The cool teacher can have very good presentation styles. They can make you laugh. They can have jokes. They can have stories, metaphors, whatnot. Just ask yourself, were they able to meet the speech object, whatever message we needed to get, whatever information we were looking for, did they present that information? If they did, then give them scores for that, and give them scores for presentation and stuff like that as well. You will end up usually ranking the cool teacher higher than the boring lecturer if the cool teacher is able to also give you the information that you require. If that happens, then the cool teacher usually gets higher scores. But what I have also noticed with a lot of the adjudication I've done is these two speakers usually end up ranking the same, because the boring lecturer will have all the information, hardly ever any cool presentation style, and the cool teacher will have very great presentation styles with prompts and all that. But when it comes to the heart of the message and the information, it's very shallow, right? So you end up generally just ranking these people the same. So it's not just information, it's also about the depth of the information that you get and how impactful it is within the message. A call to action will always be important. I think this one probably goes for every speech that you're going to do. Call to actions are important, but for informative speeches, just like persuasive speeches, they are also very, very, very important to have. Like you in other speeches, you can get away with not having a call to action, but here it's very important. It has to exist, because what's the purpose of the message then? If the call to action is not there, then the speaker scores end up suffering significantly. So always convince speakers to have call to actions, and yourself as a judge, always look out for call to actions in informative speeches. Pitches and proposals. I love this one because this is where, as CAP, we get the freedom to present interesting things. For these pitches, I have become a witch doctor. I have sold sex toys. I've sold what was this? There's another cool speech we did. I sold love potions. We have done a lot with pitches and proposal speeches. These are usually cool things. They're selling speeches basically. We have done a lot of these ones, and they're usually very, very fun. But now these ones are very particular in how they're judged, because it's not about the flair that the speaker looking for. And we can tell you to be a witch doctor, and you can give us a very cool witch doctor speech. You can even force the witch doctor voice, and it can come painted, your face painted with chalk and dust and whatever. If you do not present these things, you will have ripped your very cool shirt in vain. First are these three things up here. If you don't get a product title, if you don't understand how it works, and if you don't get the price of it, then that's not a selling speech. And by you missing these three details, you have already significantly made sure that that speech will not rank anything above an average score. So as a judge, if a speech does not have these three things, it cannot get anything above an average score. If your judging metric is 60 to 80, that's like the scoring range that you're going. This speech will not even get a 70. Without these three, it cannot even get a 70. Best it can get is a 69. The selling part, this part, the pitches and proposals part, comes from these three things. If these three do not exist, then by extension, anything else here will not have any purpose within the speech. So these three things have to be very apparent. What is the title of the product? How does it work? And what is the price? Those are the three most important details that you must have in every speech proposal, pitch, speech that you're doing. Has to exist, these three things. Then now for higher level speech, in terms of this specific speech type, you do competitor comparatives, cost benefit analysis, just to try and show why your product is better and why having your product will put the client, quote unquote, in a much better situation than they are in right now. And so that leads me to the emotional anchor. I think you're realizing we're talking about emotional anchors a lot, because that's basically what public speech is based on. It's just manipulating people's emotions to carry out something that is required to be carried out. So from an emotional anchor, you can only do two things. You can either solve a client's problem, or you can help the client fulfill a certain desire. That's the need/want. A need is a problem that you have that you want to, you need that problem solved, right? So that becomes a need. It's a problem that has to get solved, so that becomes a need. Want is something that you desire to have, desire to achieve. Is it paramount that you achieve it? No. Will anything in your life will anything in your life get worse if you don't solve it? No. But will things get better? Yes, right? So that becomes a desire. These are the only two things that come from literally any sales product that exists. It's either meant to solve a problem or make life better. Those are the only two things that exist within sales, within marketing teams. Those are the only two things that marketing teams consider, product designers consider. It's either that the product is solving a problem or it is helping the client achieve a desire that they have. And so emotional anchors are important. That is what you need to structure your product as, either as a problem solver or as a thing that helps people to achieve a desire that they have. That is how you then figure out what emotion you are going to use within the speech. If you're looking at a problem being solved, then you're probably painting a very dystopic picture of the current situation that the client is in, so that with your product, they are able to alleviate themselves from that situation. If it's a desire, then you're painting a very utopic idea of how life would look like if they had your product. Now, if a speaker is not able to do either of those two things, again, they are not doing what a selling speech requires them to do, which is either solve a problem or help a client meet a desire. So I think this one should probably have come above this one as well. Product title, how it works, price. All these three things are determined by whatever they choose here. Either they choose to solve a problem or help the client meet a desire, is what will then determine these things up here. And then they can do now competitor comparatives or like cost benefit analysis, just to push the client more into purchasing whatever they want. So this is where now the comparatives, the cost benefit analysis come from whatever they set as the price, the ease or complexity of how the product works, and either how fast they would be able to see the results or how permanent those results are going to be. Those are the things that then come into this situation. So I think this has to come first, then they get to decide this, and then this comes in. As a judge, you need to be listening for this three and this one first. Figure out whether whatever product that this speaker is trying to sell is either meant to solve a problem or help a person meet the desire that they have. Once you figure that out, then ask yourself, does the title make sense? When they're presenting how it works, how easy are they able to explain this? Because sometimes speakers have very great products, they're not able to properly explain how it works, and so you get lost in whatever they're saying. So first of all, figure this out. How well are they able to explain this? This is now what the speech flow will mostly be considering. How well are they able to explain this? And then the price and how they're able to convince you as the buyer to go for whatever they're selling, even with whatever price point they have set, is also going to be a very important detail to consider within the adjudication as you're going to be doing it. So always look for these things. I think I'm probably going to share this with Harold, and he's going to share the slide deck with you, because these ones have to be there in every selling speech, in every proposal, pitch, whatever it is. As long as you're selling something, these things have to exist within that speech. Let's look at special occasion speeches.
Just a quick one.
Yes.
If one is having a question, please look into the chat space. Or in case you have a question, look into the chat space. Then
all right, cool. So just throw your questions in the chat space. If anyone has a question, I'll answer them. All right. Special occasion speeches. I think we'll talk about this one as the last one. At the end of the speech, the event must be very clear. I think the cool thing about special occasion speeches is we usually tell you where the event is or what the event is. We usually tell you what the event is. But in a case where that does not happen if, especially in uni speeches, you don't like giving you the event. You like making it a bit, you like making your lives a bit harder. So usually you will not get the event stated out. If it has not been stated out, then whether it's not very clear what the event is, then you always have to make sure that this comes out when you're listening to a speaker. You always have to ensure that this detail is very, very clear. You have to know who the speaker is and who they're speaking to within that event. So ask yourself, whatever message that the speaker, whatever language that the speaker is using, does it reflect the event that they are in? If the message does not reflect the event that they are in, then they are probably not doing this speech justice. We need the speaker to use relevant vocabulary to the events that have been set. So relevant vocabulary is going to be very important within this. In a situation where we have given the context within the speech task, then a speaker must follow the event and any other context details that we have offered within the speech task. Sometimes we can clearly outline everything. We tell you who you are, we tell you who you're speaking to, we tell you why. Your task as a speaker is just to fit your speech within those details. If a speaker veers off even slightly to that information, then they are not doing that task, and by extension, you cannot particularly judge that speech as something that fits within that task. That's when you want to be like a very ruthless judge, or when CAP gives you that CAP and said, if a speech does not, if they don't mention a certain thing within the speech task, then they automatically get the lowest score possible because they are not doing what the task has told them to do. And in some situations, you can find CAP that is that strict. So always ask CAP when it comes to special occasion speeches, because different CAPs have different preferences when it comes to adjudicating special occasion speeches. Ask them if they miss a certain detail, do we automatically give them the lowest score, or do we just judge it and give them low scores for, say, relevance, right? For in Kenya, you'll probably get that as a directive that you just judge it normally, but give them a low score for relevance. But again, it also depends, because in some other tournaments, for example, for most of the OFIAS tournaments, any tournament that I host myself, I usually have a very huge stress on context details. If there aren't context details, then that speaker automatically gets the lowest score possible. If it's a knockout thing, they have to immediately get knocked out because they don't satisfy whatever we said. I'm not that free that I just took my time to set these things, and then it's up to you to decide whether you're going to do them or not. I set them there so you can do them. If you don't do them, then you get the lowest score possible. That's just how most of these things go. But always ask CAP for their preference when it comes to special occasion speech adjudication. But in special occasion speeches, this is all you have to look for, just the context and that the speaker is able to satisfy the details that have been set within the speech task. This is the most important thing, that the speaker is able to satisfy context details. That's largely it. So when you're evaluating speeches, there's always going to be a hierarchy that we're going to be looking at. Context is the content is the most content is key. This one has to be the most important thing that you consider whenever you're doing adjudication. Content, the content, its structure, its flow, its depth. Content has to be number one. Then number two is vocal control, because this supplements this. The content and its depth, the depth of the content can only come from this. If they have good vocal control, if they're able to modulate their voice properly to present the emotion that they want to present within the setting. But if this is not art, then we can only give them scores for, say, probably like language, right? But it can never be because of any emotion or emotional depth that happened in the speech, because this was outside. Now, third one is visual delivery. This is largely what people see. And as I said, we'll talk about these two things later. Later is now. Vocal control is these four things. This is what controls tone. These three things are what control tone. Then this one comes in later. So tone is pitch, pace, volume. Pitch is how high or how low that voice is. Pace is how fast or how slow they're speaking. Volume is how loud or how soft they are speaking. Different emotions require different levels of these three things. I want us to think about emotion as, I think this is probably like its own training in itself, but I want us to think about emotion as there are top level emotions and there are deeper level emotions. Top level emotions are probably what everyone thinks about when they hear the word emotion. Let me see. Just type in when you hear the word emotion, what types of emotions come to mind? Just show them in chat. Show them in chat and see what you guys think. Let's see what you guys think about emotions. I just want to see what emotions you guys think about when you see the word emotion. I want to see what you guys think about. Think, seeing happiness. Love, there's pity, there's nostalgia. I want to pick love, particularly from that one patient, and I'll tell you why pity and nostalgia, I will not consider them right now. But yes, excitement is also another one. Another one, just give me one more, just one more emotion, guys. So all nice emotions. Is there it's about like nice sadness. You get filled with sadness. Things like anger, frustration, right? Those are top level emotions. And I want to say them, I want to call them top level emotions because these are the things that exist within every speech. There will always be a happy moment in the speech, there will be an exciting moment, there's going to be a sad moment, there will be a point of anger, right? All those things are going to exist. And speakers like anchoring the speech on those things, happiness, sadness, anger, what. Are they able to modulate their pitches, their volume, their pace to show the difference between those levels of emotion? Because you see, a speech will not be a straight line emotionally. It will always be an up and down, up and down, up and down. There's going to be a happy moment and there's going to be a sad moment. There's going to be an exciting moment and there's going to be a depressing moment. It's going to be up and down, up and down. Is the speaker able to show you the ups and downs, not only within the content and the language that they use, but from their voice as well, their vocal control? Are they able to use their voice to properly present those emotions using their pitch, their pace, and the volume that they choose? Right? That's top level emotion. Now, deeper level emotions, pity, there's nostalgia, things that don't immediately come to mind when you think about emotion, but are still elements of emotion, right? Are they able to then use these deeper level emotions to, are they able to use pitch, pace, and volume to present these deeper level emotions? And this is the thing I usually see. And I think I made this discovery very recently, actually, this year, tournament I had, beginning of the year. Top level emotions equals top level impact within the speech. So nothing too crazy, nothing too impactful. But deeper level emotions equals deeper level impact. So this principle works specifically for persuasive speeches. When you're trying to persuade someone, you can use top level emotions like sadness, excitement, whatnot, anticipation. Okay, anticipation is like deeper level emotion, but like this top level emotions, you can use those ones to try and make people do something like the call to action. You can anchor your call to action on top level emotions. If you want deeper impact, more probability of change, and you use deeper level emotions as a supplement of these top level emotions, right? And now presenting this emotional complexity within a speech is something that a speaker has to train for a lot. And it's also something that a judge needs to train how to listen to a lot. So you need to train yourself as an adjudicator to properly listen for these details within a speech. Are you able to identify the emotions that a speaker has used within their speech? Once you note these things down, you can tell a speaker, this message that you wanted to pass would have been better if you used this emotion, if you used this and this to try and present this same message that you had here, right? I think this would have given you more probability of impact, more probability for change if you had used these emotions. That is how a speaker will be able to continuously grow their emotional depth within a speech, by you telling them it's important for you to use deeper level emotion, and not just telling them deeper level emotion, but giving them examples of this deeper level emotion. And how you think about it as a judge as well is, if it's not something that immediately comes to mind when the word emotion is said, then it's probably a deeper level emotion. Think about Sorry, I think I dropped off the call. Come back now, though. Just confirm that you can hear me. Those are great. Okay. All right. So, talking about having a speaker who can present the emotions with language is great, but how well are they able to then use pitch, pace, and volume to vocally present these emotions? Effective pausing is going to be a very good friend when it comes to vocal control. Just learning how to pause, pausing in the right place is going to be very impactful in doing things like emphasis, in just allowing the message to sink better and to sink more. Just pause. It's not about always speak all the 3 minutes that you've been given. Sometimes just take a pause, breathe, allow your audience to reflect on what you just said. Very important skill. Visual presentation, stage movement. Now here is where I always advise judges to remember that there are graceful speakers and animated speakers. Just because a speaker is moving from left to right does not mean that they have great stage movement. First of all, stage movement is purposeful. It's not simply moving on stage. It's not simply pacing. Because there's a difference between pacing and stage movement. Pacing is when a speaker is moving without any purpose. They're just moving for the sake of moving because they were told by their trainer that they need stage presence. And so they thought that stage presence means you have to move all over the stage. That's not the case. Stage movement, even in its most simplest form, is slow. It's gradual. There's a gradual build up to the movement. You don't just move because you can. It follows the energy of the voice and the energy of the content. Where there is a lot of energy in the voice, there is probably more movement. Where the energy of the voice is low, then the speaker hardly moves, if at all. That's how stage movement works. That's how you think about purposeful stage movement. So as you're listening to a speaker, ask yourself, with the energy that they're presenting in their voice, is all the movement that they're doing on stage necessary? Does it serve the purpose of the speech? Does it serve to advance the speech in any way? If the answer is no, then they're probably not doing anything important. look at the facial expressions, and it's something that speakers miss a lot. Their faces hardly ever match what they're saying. They can have very good, they can have, let's argue that the speaker has vocal control, but their face does not match what they're saying. So you can talking about a sad situation, but you can never tell the sadness on their face. They can be talking about a happy situation, and this usually happens whenever it's about happiness. Because when it's about sadness, speakers are able to make their faces look sad. When it's about happiness, speakers are never able to make their faces look happy, excited. We never see that anger. We never see it on the faces of the speakers. So matching these facial expressions is very important. And you see, for a judge, within the first 30 seconds, you need to establish a baseline for every speaker. So every speaker is different, as you said. Every speaker is different. They all have their own individual speaking styles, and that's where I said even the distinctive visual presentation of a speaker is something that you must consider for the speaker's speaking style. You have to look at one, how they say things on a neutral level, so that you can then use that neutral level to gauge their pitch, their pace, and their volume whenever they're presenting different emotions. And you also need to look at their base neutral visual presentation situation, where there is what is their base facial expression? What is their base facial expression? So that you can tell, okay, so when this face changes, does it match the voice? Does it match what they're saying? You're able to establish most of these things, establish a baseline at the beginning. It's important for this to exist because that's how you're able to then do away with that speaker bias. If you're able to identify this is a speaker's baseline, then you can always tell those subtle shifts when they happen, and you're then able to score those subtle shifts when they happen. So always look for their base facial expression, their base tone, so that whenever those things change, you can easily pick that out. In terms of visual presentation, we also have hand gestures. What are they doing with their hands? I keep telling this to speakers. If the prop is not significant, drop it so that you can use your hands to do things. Hand gestures are going to be very, very important in a speech. They are like an extension of the voice. So whatever a speaker is doing with their hands is supposed to reflect what they're trying to say with their voice. It's important for hands to always be above the waist as well. So you can't say hand gestures and then you're doing everything below your waistline and your hands are straight. You need to be above the waistline, you need to be active, and they need to be open to what you're saying. Hand gestures are things that you will probably learn how to judge better as you see it happen, not really from a training perspective. It's largely when you see these things happen. And hand placement, I think I did a small training on this at NDC, and I do this whenever I get a chance. Hand placement is a power dynamic. It's a power move. It's a power move. I usually put two speakers standing side by side. Then they all have the same, let's say, shoulder width. Right? Their stance is shoulder width. Everyone is standing the same, but there is a change in how they place their hands. One of them has their hands dropped to the side. The other one has their arms behind their back. Then in that situation, I ask speakers, tell me who you think who is the more dominant speaker in that situation, right? Then we switch that up. Say, I tell the speaker to put their palms together forward. Then I tell the other one to put their hands behind. Then in that situation, I ask them, who do you think then is the most dominant speaker? Who's the more dominant speaker in that comparative? And we do that exercise over and over in different hand positions. And the thing you realize is where you place your hands determines what power you have. And so that should reflect within the speech context the speaker has given. If, say, the speaker is a prisoner and they are, say, giving, let's say it's an execution speech, that's probably a sad situation, it's an execution speech. They will not probably have their hands in any power position unless they are being very egotistic, and that's how they want to present the persona of the speech as an egotistic person who doesn't care and has no remorse. Then they put their hands in power positions that reflect that message. If they are being remorseful and they are being sorry about what they did, then hand gestures and hand placement will also reflect that. You need to judge that as well. Ask yourself where the speaker is placing their hands. Is it impactful in presenting whatever power dynamics that they want to present within the speech? Yes or no? If whatever answer you come up with is whatever answer you come up with, just score the answer. Prompts is the last thing. I'll take you back to something I said like 3 minutes ago. A speaker should not have anything in their hand if they are not using it to advance the speech. This thing of speakers coming to stage with holding books and holding papers needs to end in novice rooms. It cannot be happening. You cannot have a speaker who's in the open category, who's in a senior category, a speaker who's in the national team, and they're still holding books on stage. That's crazy. It cannot happen. It cannot be a thing. And as a judge, it is up to you as a judge to tell the speaker that we cannot allow that to continue happening. If this is not your first tournament, that cannot be what you're doing on stage. You have to advance yourself as a speaker, and it starts right there by forcing your brain to remember things. So this thing of coming to stage with books and papers has to end, guys. You have to force speakers to get uncomfortable for them to become better. That's how it starts. They can have the book on stage, it's fine, but it's going to be like on the table or something like that. But they cannot be holding it in their hands. Their hands need to be free to either do hand gestures or to use props whenever it's significant. So when a speaker is done with a prop, they should either put it on their pocket or place it on the table or something. As long as they're not using it, as long as the purpose of that prop has already ended, then it no longer serves any purpose. It now becomes an anchor on the hand. When you have an anchor on one hand, you only have one other hand to use. That's not safe. That's not safe. So always have both of your hands. Unless now the speaker doesn't actually have one hand, then at that point you can't do anything about it. But if a speaker has both hands and they're active, then they should use both hands, right? So always tell speakers, having a prop is good. It gives you more points when you have props and you use them effectively, because there is having the prop and then there is using it effectively. So if a speaker has a prop and they have used it effectively, they can get good scores for that. But once they're done with it, just tell them to drop it. It serves no purpose to continue holding that prop. So that's it. In terms of like vocal control and visual presentation, these are the only things to consider whenever you're looking at those things. So content, we've already talked about content a lot. And I think even other trainings have gone much more in depth in content, vocal control and visual delivery. You have that. This is a hierarchy. This one has to come first. So you remember when you find yourselves in outround rooms, or you have to determine, okay, so who goes first, who goes, this is the hierarchy to use. Who had good content, then the vocal control comes second and visual delivery comes third. This is the hierarchy to consider whenever you're doing speech evaluations and you're looking at different speech types, regardless of whatever the speech type is. Always consider those things. So speech type comes in here. Whatever speech type that they have, were they able to meet the speech objectives, whatever content they had, based off of all the things I've talked about, were they able to meet all those things? Yes. Okay. What about their voice? Did it have good emotional anchoring? Did they present? Did they modulate their voice to present whatever emotion they're trying to present? Yes. Visual delivery. Then make that judgment. What I did not say to consider, number one, is accents. We never look at accents. We never consider. The problem with accents is, if the speaker has a very deep accent that you do not understand, you might not even be able to hear the content in of itself. That becomes a problem. And this is why I keep telling people, you just train yourself to listen to different accents. Watch movies, listen to songs from different countries, and just try and familiarize yourself with accents from different places, depending now on your level of judging as well. If you only judge in Uganda, then you probably have no problem listening to Ugandan accents because you're used to that, right? But if you are a higher level adjudicator who judges people from not just East Africa, but West Africa, Southern Africa, even outside the continent as well, you need to put yourself in those, if you want to be that type of adjudicator again. Because I like saying the international space is not for everyone. Some people are homebodies, they like being known, they like being village. My German teacher used to call them village heroes. That means like just like being a very local person. So if you like being a village hero, want to judge Ugandans alone, okay, you be the village hero, it's okay. But if you want to judge higher level speeches, get opportunities to judge at WSTC, WUDC, get opportunities to get invited as an independent adjudicator for big tournaments, for PANs, for WDC, for other regional tournaments in different places as well, then you need to build up that capacity for you to get invited to these places. And the one thing that will always be a barrier is if you're not able to find tournaments. There's a lot of groups that have different tournaments happening almost every month from different regions. So join those groups, join those tournaments as a judge, listen to people from different accents and judge them. Right? It will allow you to familiarize yourself, because this one's, you never consider anyone's accent. It's never in the score rubric. Because someone speaks like a Briton doesn't mean they get higher scores than anyone with like a Kenyan accent or Ugandan accent. English is English. What is the content? What is the vocal control? What is the visual representation? Those are the only three things you consider. Don't look at anything else. Factual correctness and plausibility as well is one thing that we usually don't consider unless it's an informative speech. Unless it's like you can't be saying Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened in 2001. We will not allow that. That's crazy. In an informative speech, that cannot be the situation. And like even like in quoting something that already exists, you're quoting something that people know a lot about. So this is again where you advise speakers, if they're going to use real life examples, they either need to be factually correct, or whatever they're going to use, make sure it's not popularly known. Like if I tell you Niels Oppenheimer was the one who discovered the chemical formula of water, H2O. I don't even know if there's someone called Niels Oppenheimer, but I brought it into the speech, right? And I gave it as a fact. It's probably not true, but I brought it as a fact, and it's not something that a lot of people know. But I can't say that Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened in 2001, because everyone knows when Hiroshima and Nagasaki happened, and they know what happened in 2001. You cannot bring that. And as an adjudicator, you also need to flag that and tell the speaker that cannot happen. Consider factual correctness and plausibility. Otherwise, if someone wants to become a bird and fly, allow them to fly. It's okay, guys. As long as it's not an informative speech, allow them to do whatever they want. With informative speeches, I don't want to say there is no freedom with informative speeches, because there is freedom with informative speeches. You can do a lot of creative things with informative speeches. Like, for example, you can do personification. Personification is open. You can be a tree in an informative speech, as long as the speech is about, say conservation, environmental conservation. I can personify myself and say that I'm a tree, and I'm the last living tree on the planet, and I am speaking to the new budding life, right? The new budding life that is coming into existence, because it got to a point where all life on the planet died. Humans died first, then plant life started disappearing slowly, and animal life. and so I'm the last living organism, but the planet is now regenerating and new budding life is forming, and so I'm speaking to the new budding life that is coming in. So you see, I have given you a context of who I am, who I'm speaking to, and why I'm speaking to these people, and there's a bit of creativity in that. So it's an informative speech. I'm going to give you a backstory of how the planet started dying, what people tried to do about it, but nothing really happened, and what I think should have been the direction that people could have taken to avert that disaster. So that becomes sort of like the call to action and stuff like that. But there's enough creative freedom in informative speeches as well, so they're not that dull. Yeah, I think that's it, guys. As I said, judging is simple, yet it's complex as well. It's simple when you know what you need to do. You need to know what to look for. It's complex because even when you know these things, there's still a lot that goes into adjudication. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So any questions? Let's throw in any questions. Unmute, ask if there's nothing in the, because I can't see any questions in chat. So if anyone has any question, just unmute and ask your question. Questions? All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great. So there have been no questions. I'm gonna leave you with one thing, one final message. The current adjudication pool, at least the way I know adjudication has been happening around the continent, not just in PS, in debate as well, but like I think PS has less of a problem when it comes to this, is that we have a lot of adjudicators who think they know what they're doing, but end up realizing that there is still a significant deficiency in their capacity as an adjudicator. Because when you're judging, it's okay. When you're judging novice speakers, judging novice speakers is easy because there's already so many things that they do wrong that it's easy for you to give these guys feedback as well. It's easy for you to see the mistakes when they happen. But and I think the current PS space is growing to a point where you're getting a lot of good speakers. Like public speaking is getting more and more accepted as an actual sport that people want to participate in. And so you're getting more and more good speakers coming into the space. And it becomes harder to judge these people because the mistakes that they make are not as apparent. And it becomes a problem because even us as good speakers, we're still looking to grow. We're still looking to become better because we know there are speakers out there who are great speakers, unbeatable speakers, and we want to be like those speakers, but we can't because the level of adjudication has not gone up to meet the level of speakers that we have, right? So my biggest advice to you is say more as a judge, listen more to speeches, just judge speakers more. Within this group of judges that you are in here, you guys can drop speeches, right? You like say, let's say Friday's adjudication day, and you guys split yourself into two groups, and you have one group doing speeches and the other group judging those speeches. And you don't even have to like have a formal meeting and do all that. The speaking group can just send voice notes or videos, and the adjudication group can submit their feedback within that group for every speech, and everyone gets to learn more, everyone gets to grow more. I think that will allow us to build on both of those sides of our speaking and our judging at the same time. As I said, a very good speaker will make a very good judge. An average speaker can still make a very good judge, but a bad speaker cannot make a good judge. And so you have to train yourself to do those things. There being no further questions or further statements, thank you all for having me here. Thank you, Harold, specifically for the invite. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys at EAUDC, and also for any other trainings that you might have in between, either for EAUDC or by Harold and his people. But otherwise, everyone from the adjudication team, from the training academy, the planners at the training academy, and also you as the beneficiaries of the training academy. Thank you all for having me here. That was my time. My name is Martin Javan. See you all soon.
Thank you very much, Martin Javan. I don't know if Harold is. Javan has left.
Okay, am I audible? Okay, mine is mainly just a challenge on my side. I'm facing it hard to differentiate between structure and content. Let's say, for example, we were given some task and we're meant to, judge out of content, structure, and delivery. But then I had the challenge because I found most of the notes I was writing under structure were similar to what was in the content. So I just want some bit of clarity between content and structure, and maybe some more context where my challenge is. Thank you.
Okay. Content is what you say. Structure is how you say it. Let me. I'm trying to find an example of a topic I can use. What was the topic? Do you remember what the topic was? The speech task. Benjamin. Benjamin does not seem to remember the task. Sharp. Whatever is being said by the speaker in terms of fulfilling the task. Let's take the year is 1945 as the example. The year was 1945. What content do you expect from the speaker here? Speaker, let's say the speaker wants to talk about I'll answer that question in just a second. So the speaker wants to talk about the end of World War II. It happened in 1945. I want to talk about the end of World War II. And they're probably going to be, say, a soldier at the war, and they are fighting for the Allied powers. Let's say that. Let's say they're fighting for the Allied powers, like in the US. Basically, all the UN Security Council veto powers, the guys that were there, they were fighting for that side. And they're going to give you a speech about what it was like fighting for Allied powers and how they came to discover the war ended and what life looked like after. So those are three things. One is what it was like fighting for the Allied powers. Two is how they found out the war ended. And three is how life was like after the war. Now, those three distinctions are the structure. This is the structure the speaker follows. They start with the introduction, shows them at the war fighting for the Allied powers. Then in between, the war ends. Then towards the end of the speech, we start seeing what life looks like after the war. That is a structure, the flow of this. That is what they say in each of those places. What do they say about fighting for the Allied powers? What do they say about how they discovered how the war ended? What do they say about life after, right? So whenever you have the notes for structure, you're looking at the flow of ideas. When you're looking at the notes on content, it should be about the specifics. So I understand where your notes will look very similar because one is tied to the other. The notes that you will write on content is tied to whatever flow they had. It's tied to the structure. So whatever you write was a structure is technically what you will also have different variations of that for the content. So I understand where the notes can look similar. However, you just need to understand that structure is how the ideas are flowing. The content is the ideas that are flowing. Okay, you see? Structure is how the ideas are flowing. Content is the ideas that are flowing. So content is the ideas. Structure is how these ideas are flowing, how they are going, how they're coming one after the other. So now where you need to distinguish how you score these two things is for structure, you need to ask yourself whether the transition between one idea to the next is an easy transition. You need to ask yourself whether the transitions are smooth. If there is any, not backpedaling, what is it called? Flashbacks or what's the opposite of flashback? The one that you talk about things that are going to happen in the future. I don't know. The difference between those two is there are those elements existing within the speech. Can you tell the distinction between these two things, right? If they say the year was 1945, then they're probably not speaking about them existing in 1945. So at the conclusion of the speech, where they bring us now to life as it exists right now, do we see this year's foreshadowing? Thank you, Patience. Do we see them now in the life right now? Can we see, okay, so from the speech, from this part to this part, we're talking about 1945, 1950, 1960, 1975. Right now, the year is 1990, and this is now the current time that the speaker is speaking in. Are we able to identify all that within the structure? That is what you write in the notes for structure. In content is what you write is now what the speaker will say in each of those different time blocks. Like what were they saying for each and every idea? Are we able to easily see the content, art, the emotion, all those things in there? That's the easiest distinction I can say we have for those elements. I hope I have answered that question properly. Thank you, Benjamin. Ebenezer is asking, how exactly is the speaker supposed to show the adjudicator who they are and who the audience is? Let me give you a real life example. Not a real life example, I will do it practically. The year was 1945. I was a soldier in the US Army. I just joined. And unfortunately, I got drafted when the war was at its peak. I lost my buddies every week and so on and so forth. So from the beginning of that speech, you can already tell, okay, so this was a soldier. Best I could at that time. And so if this is going to be my last message, then the only thing I'd want you kids to know is that your grandfather lived his best life. So you go ahead and live your best life. Don't wait for people to tell you this is how you should live your life. Don't live life according to people's expectations, not even your own parents. I know I was hard on your parents, but that just is from how I lived my life. And that is the only regret that I have. That I forced your parents to live a life that I thought would have been best for them. Simply because of the circumstances that I had grew up in. And so for you guys, because this right here is going to be your eventuality as well. That you will have lived a life. And so in your deathbed, will you be happy about the life that you lived, or will you have regrets? So you see, that is what an example of that could be. At the beginning of the speech, you start as a soldier, and nobody really knows what was happening during that time. Nobody knows who you are, who you're speaking. But towards the end of the speech, then we get this clarity that you are now on your deathbed, the grandchildren that you are speaking to, and you are in the hospital, and that's just that. So yeah, that is how you do that. You don't have to say it, you don't have to call it out. So my name is, at the beginning of the speech, the speaker will come and tell you, hi, my name is Martin, I am a soldier at his deathbed, and I am speaking to my grandchildren. And I start my speech in 3, 2, that's to please do not do that. That's so sad. Don't read it. It just comes out within the speech itself. Yeah. I hope Ebenezer is properly answered. Great. Any other question? Any other question? Asimo has just been laughing the entire training. He's just been laughing. Am I the funny one, or do you just have very low bar for sense of humor? Because I don't think I'm that funny. No, but you just been laughing, which is nice. Which is nice. Good motive to have you at the front row. Whenever I have jokes, you're there laughing. And the other audience, laughter is contagious. When you start laughing, everyone else will laugh. Oh, you see now other people are laughing. Now he's pretending like he can't hear my jokes. Now he's not laughing. I see you, my brother. Just laugh. It's okay. Just one emoji. Why one? You've been doing it all training. Why are you pretending to be nonchalant now? Okay, it's fine. Any other question? No questions? All right. Back to you, Harold.
Thank you very much, Martin Javan. Harold is not on a call. He's in another session, but thank you very much. I just want to let you know that this academy has 13 students, and all of them are on call. No one has missed your session. and I just want them to tap on any emoji they feel like they should appreciate you with. I'm taking note of those who are not tapping. Livian, I've not seen your emoji. McLean, Shivan, Praise. Okay. And then also, Martin, I want to let you know that, yeah, you have some friends on call. I think you've paneled with them. I just want to give Letitia a chance to say hello. Then I wrap the session up. Letitia, over to you. Okay, Letitia is in the saloon. She can't speak. But yeah, Letitia paneled with Martin Javan at NDC. And yeah, I'm meeting Martin Javan for the very first time. And when I was going through the post of Oration Hub on Instagram, I saw a post having the best public speaker in Kenya, Martin Javan. Martin Javan, it's an honor to have you this evening. And the way I feel excited is the same way I feel every one on call. All the 13 students are very excited to meet Kenya's best public speaker. It's really an honor. And for that, I think we need to add more emojis for having the best public speaker in Kenya. Thank you very much, Martin Javan. I don't know if Harold is back on the call, but yeah.
Yeah. The question is, are we learning? Are we learning? Am I changing your lives? That's usually Elijah. Elijah likes to do that in all his trainings, which is cool. Yeah, thank you guys. Well, I don't have much to say. I've spoken so much. I'm not even used to speaking this much. I've spoken so much today. Thank you guys for having me. Yeah, as I said, I'm going to bring in Derek and Harold into my PR team. You guys have a very nice way of looking at things that I don't even look at myself. I need to employ you guys in my PR team. Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys at AUDC. I hope everyone here will be at AUDC as a speaker, not as a judge. You judge high schoolers and do all sorts of things. And when you come to AUDC, you come and speak so you can suffer under my hands and Harold's hands. Yeah, but speech when me and Harold are on CAP is very cool. So you'll have fun. You'll suffer, but you'll have fun. Yeah. I hope to see you guys in the next coming months.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin Javan. Again, and just a kind reminder to Martin Javan, you promised to share the